Well, hello there and welcome to the candy wallpapered upstairs hallway of the dollhouse for another reading and quasi-commentary on The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers for December 14th, the day of selective exhibitionism. There we go. What a mouthful. And here at the top of the page is a visual representation of the day of selective exhibitionism. Well, we have us an image of, I'm gonna have to guess on this one, folks. I'm not quite sure, but boom, it looks to be a silk scarf with some tassels and some kind of a round-topped, wide-brimmed, curly, wide-brimmed hat. I don't know, it almost looks like something religious, though I'm not quite sure what religion would wear that. I don't know, maybe it's the tassels that gives me that idea. That being said, adequate representation for the day of selective exhibitionism? Who's to say? Not altogether all too important, however. Perhaps we'll make some connotations as we all get on with the read. That being said, what is important around these here parts is it's December 14th, and so it's somebody's birthday today. And so what's important is me wishing you a happy birthday. That's right. So happy birthday, you. All right. That being said, sometimes people find these videos late, days, weeks, months, whatever the case may happen to be. So if that's the case, I just want to say, I hope you had a happy birthday. All right. That being said, other folks, random individuals often come into the video here. It's not their birthday. So if that's the case, I want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. That being said, before I get into the read directly, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right. This is the DykASSt birthday broadcast, so you need to live up to the namesake, but I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled a 4 and a 2 for a 6. That's right. Now, what synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, oftentimes we get out in the world, go about our day, and, get very singular focus on our goals and our errands. So we got the blinders up and we don't see the things that the universe or the powers that be might so happen to put in our path. Ostensibly the things that help us achieve our larger goals, the things we wish to manifest in this life. So this is just an exercise to show you that the universe is with you on your path. Ostensibly to take those blinders off so we can see the things that are coming in at us and we're not missing them. Because like I said, too often we're laser focused on what's going on and we miss the things that will come into our path to help us go down whatever particular avenues we need to do to realize our higher goals and aspirations. And so this is an exercise to help us take those blinders off. We're asking the universe direct to show us certain things to help us find our way. That's right. So what could that sign be? That's right. You're 4 and you're 2 for a 6. Now you don't have to go with what I've rolled for you. The intention is there. But hey, what is advisable is you take your own set of dice. So you can roll your daily numbers if you want to change them, ascribe directional values to number sets, and set time limits with which to go in those directions. But that said, once you get all that established, pick out your point to start from. I don't know, maybe the middle of town, downtown, who's to say it's a nice day perhaps, and you set off on your first direction, your first time limit. He used to say, maybe you stop and compose yourself, look around, and oh, hey, take those blinders off and start soaking everything you see, soaking it up like a sponge, all right? Because you never know. The day might take on a theme. You might start seeing the same thing over and over again, or maybe even hearing the same thing. I don't know. Maybe there's some music that's playing, but you can just faintly hear it. What is that? And then it disappears, right? Well, just take note of things like that. So once you reach the end of your first time limit, maybe you haven't seen or heard or smelled or, I don't know, tasted anything that's of note, but stay open, all right? Don't get dissuaded and compose yourself. But then roll your dice, see what you see, get on that another direction, follow that time limit. Hey, maybe this time at the end of that time limit, hey, you hear that song once again, or whatever that piece of music was. Hey, what is that? But then it disappears again. All right, hey, that's all right. But hey, maybe then, I don't know, maybe the old number 6 bus pulls up in front of you. Well, hey, that's a sign. That's one of your numbers. Or maybe it's the 42 bus. Who's to say? Be open to this stuff. And maybe you're someone who doesn't like to ride the bus. You know what? This is a day to let all those things go aside, all right? Maybe you just so happen to have perfect change in your pocket. And so I'd say the universe is trying to push you to do that. Hey, you know what? Get on there, see what you see. Maybe roll the dice because you know you want to get off this thing real immediate like. So follow that time limit. Maybe it's only snake eyes. Hey, how about that? You get off of this thing in either 11 minutes or 2 minutes. Whenever the first stop comes up is what that would say to me. That said, maybe you get off right away and then, hey, what's this? There's that music again. And you look over and, hey, maybe it's one of those big group bikes where there's like 20 people all in certain line there having drinks and such, propelling that bike along. And maybe they're playing some kind of music that's on a loop. And maybe they pull up right beside you and, hey, get this. There's 19 people on there. That 20th spot is free. Everyone's like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, you should join us. Help bring down our bar tab if you like. And we got an extra spot. Hey, you know what? They're inviting you. You know what? Jump on there. They pulled right up to you. You were hearing this music. I would say it's kismet. Maybe there's even someone wearing a scarf with big old tassels and then someone else wearing a hat that's rounded at the top and it's got the big curly. I don't know. Who's to say? But you get the point. Maybe some other folks are wearing those hats too and you just see them out the corner of your eye. It's, the day can take on a theme, like I said. And I would say that this is the perfect opportunity for you to expand your horizons. Get on the thing. They ask you what you're up to. Maybe tell them what you're doing. Everybody's going to be like, are you kidding? Maybe you show them this video. And everybody's like, this is crazy. This guy. And then you know what? Maybe the guy driving the bike or, steering the thing, if you like. Maybe it's his birthday too. Oh, shoot. You know what? You just made a whole new group of friends. And you know what's even better? When you get more people focusing on the same thing, it manifests greater results. So maybe they just decide to deviate from their predetermined plan and go with your dice. You know what? That sounds like a pretty interesting day to me. That being said, I think you get the idea. So get out there, see, taste, touch, feel, maybe even smell a little bit of the magic, hear some of that music, and I think you'll understand why I brought it up. I think you should have some fun on your birthday, maybe even supposed to. That being said, I think you get the idea. So let's get in on your birthday read. Your month is December, your day the 14th, your sign is 21 to 24 degrees, Sagittarius, of the Sagittarius III period specifically. And your quality and element is mutable fire. Well, all right. The day of selective exhibitionism, December 14th. December 14 people often impress others as exhibitionists, but in fact, those born on this day are highly secretive about when, how, and under what circumstances they allow themselves or their work to be viewed. And indeed, although they are not infrequently public individuals who are very much in the limelight, they inhabit their own private world into which very few ever gain admittance. It is as if they live in a house doing the most astonishing things, but only open the blinds when it suits them to do so. Thus, most often, they only let people view what they are doing, less often what they are thinking, and hardly at all who they really are. Actually, seeming to reveal a great deal can be the best way to conceal what is most private. Interesting. December 14 people are often extremely complex, profound, complicated individuals. Many areas in their lives, including sexual preferences, hobbies, habits, and psychological indulgences, are of a rather unusual, even bizarre nature. Highly philosophical as well, they can operate by principles which justify their singular behavior. They most often recognize from an early age that they are not like other people. Normally, conflicts that arise with authority figures such as parents or teachers drive this point home to them. They become self-conscious but also prone to flaunting what others may consider bad or strange habits. And it is usually impossible and certainly not advisable for parents to try to fit a December 14 child into some preordained mold. And this simply will not work, for even if it seems initially successful, it can cause enormous problems down the road, not to mention latent anger, rebellion, and resentment directed at the parent. And such feelings may also be transferred onto those with whom December 14th people are later involved or onto society at large. And December 14th people are daring, but not reckless, it says in parentheticals, individuals. And they display little fear and, when necessary, do not hesitate to put themselves in harm's way. The temptation, however, for them to outrage others with their behavior is very great. And this is not always a superficial or immature impulse. Often they manage to teach others through provocation and stimulation, challenging the status quo through their own example. And thus they can be catalysts for change, whether it be in their family, social circle, or society at large. All right. How about that for a pretty interesting birthday breakdown? I'd say it was rather narrow of focus, but within that, they made a really wide, outreaching, expansive, valuable addition to what they put in there. 'Cause sometimes they don't get into like the childhood or the family when they're real narrow of focus, but they did that with you, even though they kept it pretty well pigeonholed onto that one theme. That being said, I'd like to provide a little bit of a commentary, like I said at the top. So let's get into the breakdown, if you like. See what I had to say about it. What kind of maybe connections I made with other days and the period and such. Anyway, let's get into it. December 14th, the day of selective exhibitionism. You're often impressing others as exhibitionists, and you're actually highly selective about the circumstances in which you do so, which may sound rather generic to some extent. This isn't expressly mentioned with other exhibitionists, however, at least those that have popped up in the past months. So this mention of you inhabiting your own private world despite putting yourself in the spotlight, in my mind, is mentioned to emphasize a specific difference, all right? And perhaps it's a rather notable difference as well, if the title wasn't enough of a hint about as much, all right? That said, the reading goes on to relate a rather interesting dynamic or idea that you reveal such parts of yourself to hide the more private parts, all right? Perhaps, again, maybe true of a lot of people, a kind of Psych 101 kind of dynamic, if you like, going on there perhaps. But I find it to be a rather notable and surprising inclusion to better understand how you function or approach life, too, assuming, of course, if it applies. But maybe such things are a telltale indicator of why you're also regarded as extremely complex and profound as well. And maybe why your indulgences rather may be considered bizarre, like they said. So maybe just further ways for you to express yourself so as not to show what you want to conceal. I really like that they put that in there. Real interesting. It might be as if people see the elaborate thing that you put on the outside. They're probably going to figure that there isn't anything else underneath the surface. And maybe that's exactly what you want. Who's to say? Though some may assume that you're hiding insecurity, perhaps. Again, if any of this even applies, naturally. But I can also see how maybe it's just how you prefer to operate. Maybe it's not an insecurity. I think they did kind of mention that might be the root of things, especially if your childhood was a certain way. But let's lead with the assumption maybe that's just how you operate. But maybe there is a seed of insecurity in there too. But maybe you got over that and you're just like, hey, this is how I like doing things. I can see that. All right. You prefer to operate, like I said at the top, letting those you deem worthy to see as much, or to be the ones who get to see behind the curtain. And I'd like to think that if you do allow that person in, they would see how valuable that trust is, because you don't show it to many. All right. That said, the reading really fleshes out this idea despite the sparse, rather narrow focus. They bring up the childhood influences, like I said, also some habits, potential motivations, and the quality of your strength as well as your gumption, and how you may use your strengths and for unassumed benefits, all right, which I really appreciate. And I probably would have taken me some time to come to those kinds of conclusions if I were the one composing the breakdown. So I would say they imparted a lot of value there. Also interesting, I think in a lot of ways, the way they start breaking down this exhibitionist type thing, they lead to qualities that people probably wouldn't assume you even have, like this strength or this desire to put yourself into risky situations for other people's benefit, at least as far as I remember. Or at least they said you're daring but not reckless individuals. I don't know, maybe there is a certain amount of daring that goes into being an exhibitionist in the first place. But who's to say? That's a pretty loaded dynamic to get into, and that's not why we're here. In any event, that's been the birthday breakdown and what I had to say about it. So let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right. Those born on the 14th of the month are ruled by the number 5, as 1 plus 4 equals 5, and by the planet Mercury, the speedy planet Mercury. The number 5 indicates heightened mental powers for December 14th people. And the accompanying influence of Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, lends persuasiveness and forcefulness to their arguments. And for those December 14th people who get upset or knocked off balance, the number 5 fortunately bestows a resilient character, which can recover quickly from the hard knocks of life. All right. I don't want to say it was a copy-paste job here, but they did impart a lot of the same information they typically do on a number 5 day. That being said, I think they rewrote it a little bit because it didn't quite line up with the copy-paste job type stuff. So that being said, I just like to make notice of those things because it shows that they put some time and consideration into it, at least to change the copy a bit, which is nice. So that being said, your numbers and planets. Number 5 in the speedy planet Mercury, for heightened mental powers with traits of persuasiveness and forcefulness to your arguments. And from your Jupiter co-rulership too, I would assume. Because Jupiter being the jovial, optimistic, expansive planet that imparts a drive to come out on top, well, that might just be the number 3 too from what I've read. Unless they said that here. Well, let's just go with Jupiter doing that. All right, it gives you a drive to be on top, and that would lend credence to the fact that you have persuasiveness and forcefulness to your arguments. At least I would say. But also, there's a material luck and philosophical mindset that comes with Jupiter. This might say that comes to you a little bit too. At least that was the impression I got from the breakdown. So I can most certainly see how that would lend to persuasiveness and forcefulness of your arguments, like I said. And usually I can't make an innate correlation with co-rulership traits to say how Jupiter and Mercury together comes about with these different results that maybe make you a little bit different than someone else ruled by Mercury, but with a different planet. That being said, here it makes sense, all right? Assuming astrology effects are real in the first place, right? Who's to say? Naturally. This section is finished with mention of Mercury allowing you to recover from the hard knocks of life easier, which is just wrote Mercury. Or maybe they said it was the number 5. They don't mention the numbers too much or dive into the weeds with it so much. So I've just been associating that with the planet by and large. And I just took notice of that really with yesterday's read. And I only think I mentioned it there. I noticed it after the fact. And I've been doing these readings for a while. So I'm going to have to pay a little more attention to that. That being said, that's also a common trait with the Sagittarius period as well, to say that there's a aspect of resilience. And they also mention this get up from the hard knocks of life, things that get you down. They don't tend to impart much of a lasting effect with you. Who's to say? But it'd be interesting if that spoke to you, wouldn't it? That being said, like I said, a little bit wrote here with the Mercury stuff, but they rewrote it for you. But there were a few interesting specific tidbits, like your forcefulness and persuasiveness with arguments. I think that was a new one. That being said, that's your numbers and your planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, even though it's not that new now, is it? But that being said, hey, it's your birthday. Let's dive into it and see what it has to say. We just get to leave it here in the book otherwise. You don't have to take it home with you and start dealing out the cards to predict your future, or however tarot cards are used. So let's see what it has to say. A lot of times it informs the breakdown, so we can make some interesting connections there. The 14th card of the tarot of the major arcana is Temperance, which underlies the need for balance and moderation in the lives of December 14 people. And the figure shown is a guardian angel who protects us and keeps us on an even keel. The figure, positively seen, Temperance modifies passions in order to allow for new truths to be learned and incorporated into one's life. And the card cautions against all forms of egotistical excess, because a negative indication of the Temperance card is a tendency to change too easily with the mood of the times and the current fashion. December 14th people should try to establish their own style, technique, and system of thought if possible, and stick to it with conviction. All right. Some of these elements have popped up here in the past here, but let's not try to get ahead of myself too much. I'll ruin what I already wrote. Let's see what we got here. Temperance, for that guardian angel that keeps us on an even keel. And this earlier mention of providing you with balance, which it claims you may in fact need. An entry which is seldom done, I would say. So again, they took some time to personalize this for you a little bit, even if it was just a sparse personalization. But all this to say, a lot of times they don't personalize the tarot at all, let alone first thing. So I like that they gave it thought and showed the card relates to some extent. However, this recommendation, you establish your own style and stick with it despite being valuable advice, I would say. It isn't especially novel. They've mentioned it before. But you know what? That said, I agree, all right? Don't change too often or just because the mood or the times want to influence as much or you feel like you need to keep up with as much. No, just do you, okay? Or once you figure that thing out, whatever your signature style is, stick with it, all right? You're going to be seen for being unique in your own regard, if you're not already. Again, you're an exhibitionist. You probably already know these things, so it might just help you establish something you already knew, or further establish it anyway. Not quite sure how I dovetail the tarot card here with the breakdown, so to speak, so much. A lot of times it's so glaringly apt, or that, like I said, it informs the breakdown. Here I didn't see that too much, or it wasn't as obvious to me, though it may speak to you in spades. Who's to say? That being said, oh yeah, I would say it didn't speak to the breakdown, but it might be a little bit of a reach to assume egotistical excess to your exhibitionism if it's ultimately a facade. That's right. So when they wrote down egotistical excess, I was a little bit stymied with that because you use that as a mask, right? So maybe all that ego is just it's not really there, so to speak. So I didn't quite see a correlation in that regard. But like again, I said I'm glad that they took the time to personalize it for you. Sometimes these cards are really apt, other times they're not, and they kind of use them as a warning or an example of what you should strive to do. And I guess they did kind of do that here. They said it underlines your need for balance and moderation. So maybe take note of that. Maybe you could use a little bit of that. You don't have to go too hot and heavy with the exhibitionism. Who's to say? Salt to taste, if you like. So anyway, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, your health. December 14 people must be careful that their unusual behavior and risk-taking do not land them in trouble, particularly in regard to accidents or violence. Also, since many born on this day feel misunderstood by the world from a very early age, they may tend to withdraw from life and to use alcohol and other anesthetic drugs that dull emotional pain and is dangerous in that they may lead to despondencies, dependencies, and addictions. And the December 14th diet is best kept balanced rather than exotic or flamboyant, and binges should be avoided, if possible, it says. Only moderate to mild exercise is recommended. And in regard to sexual activities, those born on this day should heed the message of the Temperance card described above. Balance, I'm guessing here. Yeah, I didn't put any notes on that. Maybe it's in the note. I think I had something to say about that. Let's see. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself again. There we go. Let's dive in. Oh, wait, the notes, yeah. Your health. Careful your behavior and risk-taking. Don't lead to accidents or violence. All right. What did I say here? I can't read my writing. It makes me wonder just what behaviors it is that you're getting up to or that you're showcasing for others. Yeah, maybe you're getting into some really risky stuff. Who's to say? That's what it makes me wonder about there. If the violence and the risk taking comes up, they didn't drill down on it too much in the breakdown, but there again, maybe they're looking at other people born in this period and saying, "Oh, they did that, they did that, they did that. Let's put it in a book." Who's to say? This also makes a strong case for withdrawing and escaping and the risk of addiction. They were talking about drug use there. Rare warning that in that respect. So maybe take note. Like I said, they don't put it in there too much. So I think it's maybe a novel idea to at least examine the things they do bring up in the health, because they're pretty good about changing those things up and making them specific. Balanced diet and mild to moderate exercise is kind of mentioned in passing to make space for the pressing regard for safety. All right, a lot of times they do that with the psychological aspects. Sometimes they don't even mention diet or exercise at all, which is a glaring anomaly in a lot of cases because these first few months I was doing this, they never really mentioned the psychological or the other stuff. They really would drill down on diet and the exercise aspects of it. So again, maybe take note with that drug aspect and the other things they mentioned there. Being careful of your risk taking. And what's also interesting and new, they mentioned the tarot's example for sexual activities, which is new, ostensibly avoiding the egotistical excess for as much. That's right. However, that's realized. Though maybe it might mean establishing your own style in that regard with this, to say the sexual activities there. Maybe both. I don't know. Try it out. Figure it out for yourself there. Develop your own style if you like. All right. That being said, that's been the health. So let's move on to some advice. All right. Sometimes make your point quietly. All right. Carefully consider what you do and say. Learn to be temperate and cultivate your philosophical side. Choose the middle way. All right. Very interesting advice insofar as some of it was philosophical, almost a meditation, if you like. That's a little bit new there. What I have to say about your advice. All right, I had to write it in a book, so my type is tiny there, or my handwriting. Bear with me. I'll try to make this as fluid as possible here. Make your point quietly. All right, there's power in reservation. I've said this in the past. There was a dictator who would wait till everybody be quiet before he began his speech. And considering the crowds that guy would draw, it seems like an impossible task. But it would work. People would be quiet. They say you could hear a pin drop. Then he would start with his tirade that was anything but quiet. Any event. Point being, there's power in reservation. Maybe even not even silence, but I think you get it. But I assume you know that, and it may mean something different to you insofar as reservation or being quiet there. But I'd say keep it up if you already do. All right. All right. What was the next one here? Consider what you do and say carefully. All right. Again, not knowing what you get into. Beware the violence and accidents, I'm assuming. Unless you like that kind of thing and you realize the risks. Okay. What you do and say, what you say, I didn't really pick up much on the breakdown about that, unless maybe you touch people off with what you're saying and you draw a little bit more of the danger there, who's to say. Some folks don't like exhibitionism either. They get offended by it. Hey, there you go. There's a good example. Careful who you direct it at there, too. Let's see. Learn temperance, it said. I don't know if that's low-hanging fruit, but they're drilling down on the tarot more than they usually do. It's very interesting. Maybe they're just trying, more than they ever have, actually. So maybe take some note of that. Maybe there's a lot to be learned or taken from the example provided in the tarot. Who's to say? They also mention the philosophical side, all right? Leaning into your Jupiter rulership, if you like. Or at least I'm assuming. So, and there's nothing wrong with examining the ideas of the world there, the philosophy. And it said, finally, choose the middle way, all right? Just good, solid philosophical advice, however you decide to interpret that. From the Buddhist sense of the word, there's not a required way to achieve enlightenment. find the middle way. The Buddha went and he did the starvation thing. Didn't work for him. And he went and he did the other thing. I can't remember what that was, but he like mixed them together and he found his own way of doing things. And that's what spurred the Enlightenment. But that's a whole different topic altogether. But there's some pretty interesting documentaries on it. So if you're interested in the middle way, there you go. In the event, that's been your advice. Let's take the energy down just a hair. The exhibition, if you like, said properly. And move on to your meditation. All right, your meditation. With little fuss, a great deal of work can be accomplished. All right, I don't know what to take from that, but one more time. With little fuss, a great deal of work can be accomplished. All right, there's your meditation. It's your birthday. That's just for you. I'm not going to throw some interpretation on it, even if I had one, which I don't. So once again, with little fuss, a great deal of work can be accomplished. All right, there's your meditation in the can, as it were. Let's move on to your strengths and weaknesses. That's right. Let's see where you're a benefit to society or, just life in general, and maybe where you're not so much of a benefit, where things are maybe you're a little bit of a hindrance with your traits there. Here's to say your strengths and your weaknesses. Your strengths, you're original, you're provocative, and you're daring. All right, but your weaknesses, let's hold up that objective mirror and spin it to the side that blows up your face and shows off all the pock marks from when you was a child and, picking your chicken pox scars there, and it left an indelible mark on into your adulthood. That's right, your weaknesses. At least, we know what some people think are weaknesses. They're real self-conscious about them there. That's right. Your weaknesses, you're excessive, you're moody, and you're isolated. Ooh, I don't know which one's worse there. Who's to say? Excessive, moody, and isolated. I would argue some of those aren't necessarily a weakness, all right? Isolation can be a strength on occasion. It just depends on the situation, all right? Also, I would say if you find your weaknesses are a hindrance, your strengths are going to be great for overcoming them. You're original. That's right. You're going to think of some way, some novel means to get over those things. And I think it's the first time I've seen original in here. That's huge. I mean, how many people want to be original? Oh, probably everybody to some extent. Provocative and daring. I would say those dovetail nicely together, all right? And if you're daring, hey, you know what? You're going to go to the risks that are other people wouldn't take to, improve upon your weaknesses there. Only said better some other way. That being said, those are your strengths and weaknesses having been related. Let's move on to those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, not only do we get to see who shares your company, but something I like to do is use this as an opportunity to segue into something I find important, and that is figuring out our passions. Too often in life I get out and meet folks, ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it, and they don't. And you know what? I think it's perfectly understandable. You get out of school, or maybe you didn't even graduate school or whatever, and you got to get right into a job so you can put money on the table, keep a roof over your head, keep them bed sheets clean on the weekends, all of that stuff. And there's just no time left in your day to put towards figuring out what you want to do. Sometimes we don't even know what we like to do. It requires time and effort to figure those things out. And sometimes we just don't have the time to carve out the time to do as much. So that being said, I think this is the perfect opportunity to not only see who shares your company, but what they did to get some kind of notoriety. Now, it might not have been their passions, it might have just been their 9 to 5, that corporate job they took, and they kind of got stuck in the rut of going up the corporate ladder. But hey, you know what? That's not what we're focusing on here. We're focusing on stirring up the fires to figure out our passions. And maybe we can just do as much. Maybe if we don't take it from the people here, at least me putting the bug in your ear about it's going to do it. Because if I can hope for anything here on your birthday, it's that you're eager to jump out of bed in the morning and get right into what makes life fulfilling for you. Eager to do as much. Because all too often in life, we're not eager to get after the job there, are we? All right, let's get into it. I think you get the point. those born on this day. We have Margaret Chase Smith, a U.S. Congresswoman, 8 years, a senator, and of Maine 6 times. James Doolittle, the U.S. Air Force general who led an attack on Tokyo, an aeronautical engineer, stunt pilot, vice president of Shell Oil. We also have Paul Eluard, a French poet, and he served in an ambulance unit in World War I, was an anarchist, and responsible for a work of the name Poetry and Truth. We also have Leonardo Boff, a Brazilian Catholic theologian and champion of the poor. We also have Shirley Jackson, a short story writer of The Lottery and a novelist. We also have Stan Smith, a U.S. Open Wimbledon tennis champion. Spike Jones, the comic band leader. Clark Terry, a jazz trumpeter. Gerard Reeve, a Dutch novelist of The Language of Love. We also have Dawn Hewitt, TV news producer and creator of 60 Minutes. We also have Patty Duke, a film and TV actress. Christopher Parkening, a British classical guitarist. Rosalind Turek, perhaps, a pianist and a Bach interpreter. Lee Remick, a film and TV actress. We also have Shyam Benegal, an Indian film director of Anchor. We also have Nikolai Bazov, a Russian physicist. Cecil Payne, jazz baritone saxophonist. George the Sixth, there we go, the British 20th century king and emperor of India. And Ethel Brown Harvey, a cell biologist and embryologist. There we go. And that has been those born on this day, which essentially rounds out your birthday reading. Except to say your season is fall, your sign is Sagittarius, the Sagittarius III period specifically, and your quality and elements is mutable fire. Now what does that mean? Well, that's a whole different video altogether. I'll leave it at the end for you. You can see what the channel looked like in the early days there. I think my energy was a little low too, considering it's fire. How could that be? Any event, hey, I know it's a big ass hard sell to try and take inspiration from other people's accomplishments, but like I said, hopefully maybe just putting the bug in your ear helps stir up the fires. And if I can wish for anything, like I said, for you on your birthday, it's that you know your passion or you're going after it. Or if you haven't figured that out, that you figure out a way to do as much. That's right. Any event, this has been December 14th, the day of selective exhibitionism. From The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description if you're interested in diving in further, finding out more what it's about. And what else do I usually say with this here? Well, hey, it supports the channel in the bargain, which I appreciate. And you know what? If you have company over, exhibitionist you are, it's going to get the party started for better or for worse. As people are going to be like, that's not me, or that's me totally. Or they totally disagree. They find it real down in the dumps kind of thing. Hey, you know what? For better or worse, it's going to get that ice broken. That's right. And that's always a good thing. It takes a little bit of the pressure off you having to take up the spotlight all the time, right? I would argue yes. All right. In the event, hey, not altogether all too important, the book there. What is important, like I said at the beginning, wishing you a happy birthday. So have a happy birthday. And for everybody else that joined us here, celebrate ostensibly. I just want to say, hope you enjoyed yourself and you join us for your birthday read. That being said, lest I forget, boom, your daily numbers. That's right, your 4 and your 2 for a 6. Get out there and let the universe show you, or the powers that be show you, that it's with you on your path. See some of the coincidences too, if you're more a believer, and that's what's going on. Line some of them up. If there's anything you do on your birthday, have a little fun and see, taste, touch, smell, maybe even hear some of the magic out there. And if you do, I think you see why I suggested it in the first place. But that being said, once again, happy birthday and take care of yourself. That's right.